Hi, Cecily here again with ReliCheck. Welcome back and welcome to the final part. Let me catch us up. In part one, we set the study up and got the data clean and mapped. In part two, we analyzed both strands. The numbers showed a real confidence gap between the clinics and a real difference in who improved. And the words gave us 6 themes, with the access barriers piling up at Lakeview. So we have 2 strands of solid evidence sitting side by side. Now, in part 3, we finally bring them together. We merge the strands, build a joint display, apply the contextual lens, judge where the evidence converges, and where it diverges, draw the conclusions only the combined evidence supports, and assemble it all into a report we can defend. This is the payoff, where the numbers and the words become a single careful finding. Let's bring it together. A theme name on its own isn't evidence. So in codebook and evidence, I do at least 2 things for every code. I write a short definition tight enough that another researcher could apply it the same way I did. And I write a full description that gives it room. Take care team. My short definition is this: responses that credit a coach, nurse, or care coordinator and their ongoing contact as what helped the patient manage their condition. Then the full description fills it in. Care team captures any mention of the clinical support relationship, a health coach, nurse, care coordinator, or provider who checked in, set goals, noticed setbacks, listened, or otherwise stayed personally connected to the patient. The emphasis is the human relationship with the care team and its continuity, the weekly check-ins and the one-on-one time, rather than the patient's clinical results or their own sense of confidence. For this first code, I go a step further and fill out the inclusion rules, the exclusion rules, and the borderline cases. And you might be wondering why bother writing all that out. Here's the honest answer. On the quantitative side, your work is reproducible by design. Anyone can rerun your t-test and land on your number. Qualitative coding doesn't come with that guarantee for free. You have to build it, and this codebook is how you build it. Think of it as writing your judgment down so it survives you. The short definition is the quick handle, the one line that tells any reader at a glance what this code is. The full description is where you give it room, the real meaning, the texture, what this theme is actually about. Then the 2 rules do the hard work. The inclusion rules are your green light. They say exactly when a response counts as this code. The exclusion rules are the fence. They say when it does not, and that's what keeps your codes from bleeding into each other. That's the difference between care team and support, between confidence and a good clinical outcome. Without that fence, 2 people, or even the same person on 2 different days, will code the same quote 2 different ways. And the borderline cases are the part people skip, but they matter the most. These are the messy quotes, the ones that could honestly go either way. When you write down how you resolve them and why, you're doing 2 things. You're making sure you decide the same way every time, and you're giving a second coder a fair shot at agreeing with you because they can see your reasoning, not just your labels. Put it all together, and this is what turns your coding from trust me into here. Is exactly how I decided. That's what makes a qualitative finding defensible. It's the same honesty we showed on the numbers, just applied to the words. You'll also see an option here to tag a code for the contextual lens, but I'll leave that for now and come back to it because it deserves its own moment. Once I've filled a code out, I set its status. There's a drop down with 3 choices: draft, review, and accept. While you're still working, draft and review are fine. But when you're ready to move to the next step, set it to accept and hit save code. Do that for each one. And you'll notice a draft codebook with AI option 2. That one's completely optional. But if you truly understand your own data, and you should, this is the one place I'd skip the AI and write it yourself. The whole point of a codebook is that the judgment is yours. Here's where the words start doing real work. theme by group splits each theme across the outcome we actually care about, whether a patient's A1C improved. It's the qualitative parallel to the chi-square we just ran. And look what falls out. Almost every theme sits with the patients who got better. Care team, 92% from improvers. Confidence, all 9. Support, all 6. Transportation and overwhelm, every single one. So the coaching relationship, the confidence, the support, they all cluster with the people whose numbers moved. The words and the numbers point the same direction. And then access breaks the pattern. Of the 16 access responses, 10 come from patients who did not improve, 63%. Access is the only theme that lives with the non-improvers. And here's the line that stops me. Only 11 patients failed to improve, and 10 of their 11 responses are about access, cost, insurance, and food. 10 of 11. That is not a small lean. That is the answer to our puzzle surfacing. The people whose numbers stayed flat are the very ones telling us the barrier was access, not effort. Now, a step I really respect and one quantitative researchers will appreciate because it's about honesty in your method. Trustworthiness. This demo has one coder, me. So instead of pretending I have intercoder agreement I don't have, I record the truth. One coder, no second reader yet, and I name that as a limitation. Studio also keeps an audit trail, a running record of what happened and when. Project created, data linked, 50 rows, 13 columns. That trail is your paper's memory, and it's what lets someone else trust how you got here. This is the hinge of the whole design. Merge and compare puts one row per theme and sits the 2 strands side by side as equals. Look at the counts across the top. 6 themes, all 6 with coded evidence, all 6 with a quant result linked, and all 6 ready to compare. Every row is carrying both strands now, and each one is marked ready. Take care team. On the qualitative side, you get the coverage, 12 coded responses, 24%, the sentiment mix underneath it, and a quote already selected. On the quantitative side, the linked t-test of self-efficacy by clinic, p equals 0.0009. And the merge reading spells out the job. Both strands have evidence, so compare whether the number and the theme evidence tell the same story. Now notice support down the list. It's marked ready with its coded evidence and its stat in place, but it still says no quote selected, and its next action is choose quote later. That's fine. You can stage the row now and come back for the quote. The other rows say build joint display because they are fully ready to go. When every row you care about is ready, that's your green light into joint displays. Now the centerpiece, the joint display. This is the table that makes mixed methods click. And honestly, it's the one figure I'd put in the paper. It has 3 views, and we'll walk through each. Start with the theme joint display. 1 row per theme, and it lines up 4 things. How often the theme showed up, the statistical result tied to it, the sentiment of those responses, and a representative quote. Look across the top. Care team, 12 responses, 24%. Paired with the self-efficacy t-test, P equals 0.0009, and the sentiment runs strongly positive. Now drop down to access, 16 responses, 32%, and notice its stat is different. The A1C chi-square, P equals 0.017. That's the app pairing each theme with the test that actually speaks to it. The confidence themes with the t-test, the outcome themes with the chi-square. And look at access's sentiment. It's the one theme that leans negative, roughly 44% positive to 56% negative, while the others lean positive. The numbers and the tone are already telling the same story. You choose a representative quote for each theme with choose quote, so the row carries a real patient voice next to the statistic. The second view is the case matrix. which drops all the way down to the individual patient. 1 row per case, tying that person's number to their words. Take N14 at Northside. A self-efficacy of 5.2, positive sentiment, coded care team, and the quote, "My provider actually listened and that changed how I manage things." Then look at L18 at Lakeview. A lower score of 4.4, negative sentiment, coded access, and the words, "I lost my insurance partway through and had to ration my supplies." That's the whole Convergent design in a single line, the number and the reason for it sitting together for one real person. And here's the view I love the most, discordant and negative cases. This is MM Studio hunting for the patients who don't fit the pattern before you write your claim. Look at the counts. 23 flagged, 5 in strong discordance, 14 negative narratives across all 50. Take L06, the number's low, a 3, more than 2 standard deviations below the mean, but the narrative is positive. This patient trusted themselves to adjust their own routine. A low score with a hopeful story. That's a compensating nuance worth understanding. Then L03. The number looks favorable, a 6.4, but the narrative is negative. Healthy food is expensive, and some weeks I had to choose what to buy. A good-looking number with a hard story underneath, and the app calls that a strong discordant case to explain. This is the tool protecting you from your own tidy conclusion. Good qualitative work looks hardest at the cases that argue against it, and here that happens automatically. Remember that tag I skipped earlier? Here's where it pays off. The contextual lens is ReliCheck's culturally responsive check, and it's the one step in this whole workflow you will not find in other mixed methods software. This is what separates careful research from careless research. It asks you to look at each theme through 6 lenses before you lock in a finding: context, voice, position, representation, counter patterns, and consequence. Start with access. In the context lens, I name the conditions around the data. Lakeview patients face higher medication costs, unstable insurance, and food insecurity. The access barrier is about resources, not effort. Then the consequence lens, where I write the thing that must not happen. Do not let a flat A 1C number frame Lakeview patients as non-compliant or unmotivated. The barrier is access, not willpower. That one sentence is the difference between a finding that helps Lakeview patients and one that blames them. And the lenses aren't only for the hard themes. Take care team through the voice lens. Voice asks whose experience is centered and whose is thin or missing. Care team is loudest among the patients who actually formed a relationship with a coach, and most of those are Northside. The patients who never connected or who left before a relationship formed are quiet in this theme. So read care team as the experience of the people who stayed, not the whole population. Now the position lens on that same theme. Position asks about power and role. These patients are praising clinicians who hold real authority in the encounter. The coach sets the schedule, the plan, and the tone. Warmth expressed inside a power relationship can be genuine and still be incomplete because patients may underreport friction with a care team they depend on. Naming that keeps you from reading the praise as the whole truth. Now look at the left rail as you work. Under each theme are little bars, and they turn blue as you save a lens. So at a glance, you can see exactly which lenses you've covered for each code. Access here reads lens format, which means I've done enough lenses on it to move forward with confidence. And one habit the app enforces, a good one. Every reading you write, you save. If you don't save it, it isn't recorded. So save each lens before you move on. Those saved notes stay with the theme and feed integrated interpretation and the report builder later. This is where the study stops being about blame and starts being about a fixable structural problem. Now I make the call. theme by theme. Convergence and divergence ask one question of each theme. Do the two strands agree, complicate each other, or disagree? For each one, I pick converge, nuanced, or diverge, write a one-line reading, and save it. Care team, converge. Higher self-efficacy at Northside matches the positive care team narratives, so the numbers and the words point the same way. Confidence converge too. The self-efficacy gain shows up in the ratings and in patients describing real control. Support, I mark nuanced. It reinforces engagement, but it shows up evenly at both clinics, so it strengthens the picture without separating the groups. Transportation and overwhelm, both nuanced as well. Real but small. Early friction that complicates the story rather than contradicting it. And then access. This is the one diverge. On its own, the aggregate A1C number looks like a Lakeview failure, but the patient's words tie that flat number to cost, insurance, and food. For access, I also tick a box the other themes don't need. I aggregate and experience diverge for this finding, and watch what the app does the moment I check it. This is the single most dangerous moment in all of mixed methods work. It's where the numbers say a group failed, and a careless read turns that into those patients just didn't try. So the instant I flag that divergence, MM Studio points me straight back to the contextual lens with a one-click link right here, because a split between the aggregate and the lived experience is exactly what that lens exists to interrogate. Think about how those two steps work together. Convergence and divergence names that the strands pull apart. The contextual lens makes me account for it through context, voice, counter pattern, and consequence before I'm allowed to call it a finding. The two steps guard the same risk from opposite sides. I save each reading as I go. Naming that divergence out loud and then being sent to explain it is exactly what a convergent design is for. Here we lift up from the themes to the conclusions only the combined evidence supports. These are the meta-inferences, and there are 4. 1, the program builds real self-management confidence. The higher scores at Northside are echoed by patients describing genuine control, so the confidence gain is real, not a rating artifact. 2, the clinic outcome gap is an access effect, not a program or a patient failure. The flatter Lakeview outcomes trace to cost, insurance, and food, not to effort. 3, care team contact is the lever behind engagement and completion. And 4, early overwhelm and transportation are the fixable friction points. None of those 4 could come from the numbers alone or the words alone. They come from the merge. Integrated interpretation is where I go one theme at a time and answer a single question. What does the combined evidence mean? And what should someone actually do about it? For care team, protect and staff the weekly check-ins. They're the engine of engagement and completion. For confidence, the core promise is working, so scale it. For access, close the outcome gap with cost and access support, and do not read a flat number as non-compliance. For overwhelm, ease the onboarding pace and front-load support in the first few weeks. There's a draft with AI button here too, but I write these myself because this is the judgment call the whole study was built to earn. And notice the pattern. Every interpretation ends in something a clinic could actually do on Monday. That is the difference between a finding and a recommendation. I save each one as I go. Before I write a word of the report, I run the evidence strength checks. These are deterministic. They run right on the Mac, and they gauge how well the evidence actually supports the claims I'm about to make. 50 responses, pass. 100% of responses coded, pass. Saturation stable, pass. Effect sizes sane, pass. And 1 review flag, this time on 2 themes. Transportation has 3 coded responses, and overwhelm has 4, both under the threshold of 5. Now watch what I don't do. I don't force a merge or delete either theme just to turn that flag green. 3 and 4 responses, that's honestly thin, and the app is right to say so. But transportation and overwhelm are real, distinct pieces of this study. So the honest move is to keep them and name them as limitations, not to bury them for a clean scorecard. Chasing green is how you distort your own findings. Naming the limit is how you keep them trustworthy. The rigor dashboard is the pre-flight check for the whole study, and it even tells you how to read it. Missing first, then needs review. And notice the small print? This panel does not change your data. It's a mirror, not a machine. 5 strong, 5 needing review, 4 missing, start with missing, executive summary, integration, recommendations. Those 3 are just report sections I haven't written yet, and they fill in on the very next step. The 4th, coding agreement not computed, is my single coder limitation, showing up honestly, right where it should. Then needs review, report not finalized. That's the next step too. Theme support flags my 2 thin themes, transportation and overwhelm, which I'm keeping and naming as limitations. Member checking not recorded, another limitation to name. And 2, I can actually close right now. 4 joint display rows still need a quote, and 1 row needs an integration reading. Those I'll go back and finish. The strong column confirms the spine held. The strength checks passed, the audit trail exists, 6 themes, 50 coded response links, and a project notebook recording every move. Here's the mindset. I don't chase this dashboard to all green. Some of these are real work to finish, like the missing quotes. Others are honest limits I name and move past, like the single coder. A study that reports its limits is stronger than one that pretends it has none. Last stop, report builder. And here's the thing to understand before you touch a button. The report is built from what you saved. Every section you saved along the way, the descriptives, the themes, the joint display, the lenses, the meta-inferences, all of it is what gets pulled in when you hit assemble. If a section is saved, it's in the report. If it isn't saved, it isn't there. And look at the panel on the right. That's the running list of everything that will go into the report, section by section. Think of it as your table of contents before you build. So here's the rhythm. You assemble, you read it through, and maybe you realize you forgot to save one section. That's fine. It happens. You just go back to that step, save it, come back here, and hit reassemble. The report rebuilds with the piece you added. Assemble, read, fix, reassemble. That loop is how you get a complete document instead of one with a hole in it. Now, the part I really want you to notice, assemble full report is a different thing. That one is an AI-generated write-up of your report, drafted right here on your Mac. And here's why that matters more than it used to. A growing number of journals now ask a direct question at submission. Did you use AI in your research? And if so, how? Studio answers that for you. When you use the AI write-up, the app generates a disclosure, a plain statement of how AI was used and where, so you can hand it to a journal instead of scrambling to write one yourself. That is not a nice to have anymore. It's becoming a requirement, and the tool builds it in. Then I export to Word and save it with the rest of my study. And that's the full Convergent workflow, start to finish. A defensible mixed methods report with the numbers, the words, the limitations named honestly, and an AI disclosure ready for the journal, all in one document. And there it is, a full Convergent mixed method study, start to finish, in Studio. Look at what we did. We started with a dangerous, easy conclusion that Lakeview patients just didn't try. We ran the numbers and found the outcome gap was real. Then we listened to the patients, and their own words turned that gap from a story about effort into a story about access, cost, insurance, and food. Same evidence, a completely different and far more honest conclusion. Along the way, we set up the study, cleaned the data, analyzed both strands with rigor, merged them, checked our own limits, and built a report we could defend. That's the whole point of mixed methods. Numbers and words brought together to protect you from the wrong answer. If you come from the quantitative side and this felt reachable, that's exactly the feeling we're after. I'm Cecily. Thank you for spending this time with me across all 3 parts, and I'll see you in the next one. You can find MM Studio at mmstudio.ReliChecksurvey.com. You can also look for upcoming demos and tutorials on our YouTube channel, or sign up to receive our weekly articles, where we guide you through the ins and outs of analyzing your data.